Hello, I'm Jennifer Grace and I'm here with my layout process video for the Scrap365 September 2014 Sketch Challenge. Here's the products that I've chosen to work with this month. I've got a photo of my daughter on a swing ride at a fair, and the sketch is here with some square details on it and semicircle areas on the left and right. I've pulled together a variety of products. I mostly chose American Crafts products because they are sponsoring this month's challenge, so I dug through my stash and see what I could find. Pulled together a selection of papers and embellishments. I've got a few bits from other companies too. I've also got some gold embossing powder from American Crafts. So I'm going to walk you through my process and show you how it goes. First of all, I'm going to show you how I chose my background paper. I ended up using this rainbow piece of paper from Simple Stories, but it took me a while to choose that. I looked at the sketch and noted the semicircular areas of detail, and I chose these 6x6 papers which I wanted to use on the left and right for the areas of detail. But I couldn't choose the background paper. Here's some of the ones I tried it out on. First I tried this dark yellow cardstock, but I decided it was too bold and it overtook the 6x6 papers. Then I tried some paler cardstock. I thought this one just looked a bit boring, a bit too drab, so I tried it out on some stripy pattern papers, and I realised this was way too overpowering, especially with the stripy 6x6 paper. It just was making my eyes hurt. So I found some wood grain paper. I thought perhaps a pattern paper with a bit of a softer feel would work well. But I thought this was also a bit too washed out and boring, like the paler yellow paper. I really like this one from Pink Paisley, but I thought it was a bit too boyish, the photos of my daughter, and I wanted it to look a bit more girly and happy. Of course, I also tried this black paper, not girly and happy at all, but I thought it might work and make the colours of the 6x6 papers pop. I wasn't quite happy with it though. But then I found the rainbow paper, and it was just perfect because it was happy and bright, just like the feel in the photo. Once I'd chosen my background paper, I wanted to create some semicircles to go with the sketch. At first I thought about doing it by cutting out the 6x6 papers into semicircles, but then I decided to use some embossing powder. So I got out an old Whispers embossing pen, which is basically a clear ink pen, and I used it to draw a very quick freehand semicircle onto the background paper. Then, because the sketch has a few extra semicircles, I kind of doodled a few more lines around it. I thought this added to the lively feel. And then all I had to do was heat emboss it. My heat embosser is also very old, so it takes quite a while to heat up the powder, but it gets the job done in the end. I love this gold Wow embossing powder because it looks really dark and dingy until you heat it up, and then it just looks so gold and pretty. I love gold at the moment, so it makes me happy. I've sped the rest of this up considerably because you don't want to sit for ages watching me heat up paper. But basically, I heat up the paper, I bend it back and forth a few times to try and flatten it out again, because the heat embossing always kind of buckles the paper a bit. But I just flatten it out a bit like that to get it ready to do the other side with my semicircles. Then I follow the same thing of just kind of keeping it lively, doodling my lines on with the pen, and then adding the powder on top. When I notice that a bit of powder hasn't stuck on one place, I just add a little bit more on top, and there seemed to have been enough pen left to hold it on. So I was able to just shake it off again and heat up the rest of the semicircles until it all looks lovely and golden glittery. Then I just leave it flattened underneath a couple of albums for a few hours to make sure the paper's flat. So you can see here it looks pretty much flat and nice and shiny. Now I just had to start working out where I was going to put my items on top. I knew that I was going to be covering up a lot of the semicircle pattern, but that was okay, all part of the sketch. I needed to think about what details were going to go on top. I started just placing them back down again, referring to the sketch and working out where things were going to go. I needed to pull out the rest of my pattern papers and see if I wanted any more of those details on here. But before I got too caught up in that, I decided to just cut this piece of doily patterned paper down to size so that I could work out what was going to go behind it and around it. And also to start getting my photo mat of these other papers prepared. I find if I sit and play around with it too long, I could be there for hours and hours and hours, whereas if I just start cutting and sticking, it gets done a lot faster and I'm always pretty happy with the result. It's hard sometimes to let go and just start cutting and chopping and sticking, but you know, we've got so much pattern paper in our stash, why not just get on and use it? It's not like it's going to ruin it. We just need to plonk it all together. So I've got my photo mat pretty much prepared. I haven't stuck it all together in case I want to tuck extra things behind it and move it about a bit. And then I chopped a few strips of other papers or the offcuts from the photo mat and worked out how I could put those underneath the doily. I pushed and pulled these about a little bit, but then I realised that I needed to choose some of the other items that were going to go on my page before I could decide exactly how these were going to lay. So I pulled out some of the other items, starting with some pattern papers which had phrase sections on them, kind of cut apart cards. This one says, "Take a picture, it will last longer," which I thought was appropriate because my daughter was flying past so fast on the chair swing that it was really hard to get a photo of her. So I thought that was quite good. I choose a few other appropriate ones like happy, sweet summer days, old joy, all things that kind of accentuate the happy, free feeling of the moment. I noted on the sketch there was an area of detail on the bottom right corner of the photo area, but I struggled with fitting something there on my page because my daughter's feet are in the bottom right hand corner of the photo and I didn't want to cover them up. So I kind of ended up not putting anything there. You have to kind of work with how it fits on your page. But I piled up lots of other bits and pieces and tucked them in and around. I like to fill up my pages quite a lot. So even when a sketch doesn't have an area of detail, I'm not shy about putting things in those places if I feel it's right. On this particular page, I felt I needed some more details at the top and the bottom of the page. So I cut another circle in half. I'm kind of repeating the semicircular theme at a different edge of the page. Kind of helps to keep it all together even though I'm adding so much detail. At this point I decided that I didn't actually like the paper strips at the bottom of the doily area. They were just making the page feel a bit too cluttered and too horizontal. It was all going too much across the page and not enough around it, and they were also covering up the semicircular design too much. So several reasons I got rid of those. And then I just started taking everything up and sticking it all back down again. Once the majority of my bits and pieces were stuck down, I chose to do the title. I wanted it to say Ride Time, and I quite like the idea of these blue striped letters for the word ride, because they were quite nice and bold and they matched the blue colour on my daughter's t-shirt. But they were so big they really didn't fit on. I didn't want them to overlap onto the rainbow paper too much because I thought they kind of got a bit lost. So I decided to pull them off and try again with a different set of letters. I went through my stash and pulled out some green foam thickers, which kind of matched the colour of the grass, and kind of picked out the green on the background paper, which I hadn't really featured anywhere else on the page, so I quite liked that it helped that background colour to pop. And then I used these grey jelly bean soup letters to spell out the word time. Once I had these vaguely in place, I paused the video recording for a minute because I stick my head quite close to my letters while I'm positioning them. It's always quite difficult when I try and record it. So I stopped the video to allow me to get those straight. Once they were in place perfectly, I just added on some more of my embellishments. You can see I added some on with pop dots and some I just stuck flat onto the page. I like the difference in depth that this creates, just keeps it interesting. This piece of ephemera is quite cool. It says admit one. Thought that was perfect for a page about a ride, especially as I think she might have been the only one on the ride at the time. Then I just kept tucking more little bits and pieces around. I've got this wooden heart. I tried to work out where it would go best. I chose to stick the heart near this yellow rosette because the red rosette has some detail near it, and I didn't want the yellow rosette to be too adrift on its own on the page. Then I wrote out my journaling, which says, "Sometimes you love rides, other times you cry to get off. The first one we tried you on was a rocking pony and you hated it. You were happy on this one though." I did intend to fit a bit more journaling on here, but because I don't really plan out my journaling, I just write it straight onto the page and see what fits. This is what I ended up with. Sometimes I go back and write a bit more detail on the back of the layout later on, but I'll admit I don't do that very often. It depends how important the story is to me. At this point I referred back to the sketch to check I had the main details on, make sure I had the title, the journaling, that I'd covered the areas of detail, and I decided I had followed this sketch quite well. So now it was up to me to finish it off with the details that I wanted. So I pulled out some more bits and pieces. I just love putting the bits and pieces on. This is my favourite part of making a page. I do enjoy the other bits and pieces, but my favourite thing is all the little details, the added extras that make it my own and make it pop. And it just feels most therapeutic to me, trying to decide where these little bits go. So I picked out some puffy stickers and some cork arrows. I thought I might put one of those on the page. And I used the backing of plastic. I kept the sticker stuck on there and just cut the plastic out so that I could move the cork arrow around the page while I decided where it was going to go. I love it when stickers come on this clear backing so that I can play around with them a bit. If they don't come on a clear backing, like 12 by 12 sheets of cardstock stickers, then I'll take them off of the cardstock backing paper, put talcum powder on the back, and then I can still move them about my page before sticking them on with glossy accents or foam dots or whatever I want to use to adhere them to the page. So now I'm playing around with the details, working out where I need a bit more interest. I love this little adventure kind of tipping off the edge of the page. Makes me think of a roller coaster just going over the edge. So that's why I chose to put that there. My cork arrow broke as I was sticking it onto the page. It's very fragile, thin cork, but it was alright once I stuck it down. The two parts kind of looked alright together, so that was okay. Next, I placed my dots around the page. Everybody who knows my style knows that I always have to add some enamel or rhinestone dots. So I just fiddle around with them on the page. I tend to place them near to other areas of detail, but not always. Depends on my mood. And I try and echo the colours around the page, kind of spreading them out to keep your eye moving around the page. Once I'd finished that, I thought it might be finished, but I decided it needed a bit of extra detail down the bottom right corner. So I did a bit of doodling with a white pen. Now my white pen is an Ink Essentials pen and it's not very good. I don't know if I don't store it the right way up or if it's just not a good pen in general, but I can never really get it to come out looking bright. But I just kind of go over the same line a few times until it stands out enough that you can actually see it. Once I'd done that extra bit of detail, I thought, hey, maybe I'm done. But no, I decided it still wasn't quite there. I still needed a bit more stuff on my page. So I pulled out some stickers and chose the smaller ones. I picked this yellow sun because it echoed the yellow rosette on the right and the yellow flare under the photo. So it kind of brought those together in a threesome. And I added this feather behind my photo mat. Just kind of playing around with things, adding a couple of extra little bits and pieces until I felt happy. I tend to just keep chucking stuff at the page until it makes me happy. The final thing that I added to my page was a little green leaf. Again, this was to make a triangle of colours. It matched the alphas I'd used for the word ride, and it matched the green puffy arrow sticker underneath So Much Fun. Once that was done, I was happy with everything on my page. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Jennifer Grace and this was for the Scrap365 Sketch Challenge.